Hello everyone, today I am going to be making a classic banana bread recipe, and this is my notebook where I keep the recipe for banana bread. So the serving size is going to be for 10 people, and these are some of the ingredients that we're going to need. We'll need 3 very ripe bananas, 1/2 cup unsalted butter or 8 tablespoons, and it has to be at room temperature. We'll need 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. In this recipe, I'm going to be using a different sugar. Instead of granulated sugar, I decided to go with this brown sugar because it tends to give it more of an earthy taste. So we're going to go with brown sugar instead of granulated sugar. And we need 2 large eggs, and they need to be lightly beaten. And we're going to need 1/2 cups of flour. Today I'll be using bread flour instead of the traditional all-purpose flour. We'll be using the bread flour because it makes the banana bread just taste better, in my opinion. And then we're going to need 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 cup of walnuts or raisins. Now, I'm not going to be adding walnuts or raisins because I don't have any at the moment, so it's just going to be a plain banana bread, good, straight to the point, and delicious nonetheless. Okay, so for the first step, we're going to be combining our sugar and our butter together. So I have some light brown sugar, or you can just use standard brown sugar, and you're going to mix it with your softened or room temperature butter. See how it's slightly squishy? That means it's at room temperature. And first what we want to do is we want to measure out 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. So I have a 1/4 cup. Since it's 3/4, we're going to take 3 of these and combine it with the butter. Okay. And I'm going to use this blue bowl. I'm going to use this blue bowl to measure everything out for the sugar. So we're going to take our bag and just pour. About 1/4, but not quite. It kind of looks like sand, like kinetic sand. Let's try to do a little bit more. Okay. Alright, and then we can level it out. And then we have about 1/4 of a cup, so we'll plop that in there. And then we're going to measure another one. And then this will be our last 1/4. So there we have it. We have 3/4 cups of sugar, for our banana bread. And I'm going to get another bowl so that we can combine our softened butter and the sugar together. So I have a pink bowl here. For the recipe, you may want to use a stand mixer or a hand mixer to cream the butter and the sugar together. If you don't have one, you can simply use a whisk. Just want to plop that in there. Okay, and so this is our little whisk, and then I'm just going to add in my sugar little by little. Just add in the sugar little by little and whisk it in. Now I'm just going to fold it in. It's going to be nice. Look, it's mixing into the butter really well. The key is to have it softened. If you have it softened, it'll fold right in. Softened butter is the key. Look how beautiful that looks. Looks really nice. You get this nice thick mixture of the sugar and your butter that you're gonna end up putting in there, okay? So we'll set this down to the side. Now we are going to mash up our banana. So if you remember the recipe, it said 3 really ripened bananas, and here they are. You want some bruising on them so they're really ripened to be added. So we're gonna open this up, see, and I'm just gonna plop them in there. We have 1, 2, 3. Now we're just gonna mash these up. And it says to mash these up to the consistency of applesauce. So we're gonna make it that applesauce-like consistency. So this is that applesauce-like consistency. So after we have mashed up our bananas, mixed our softened butter with the brown sugar, we're now going to take on cracking these 2 eggs, and then we're going to blend them lightly. We'll just take a fork and blend them lightly. There we are. Now, with this bowl that we have here, we're going to be mixing together our softened butter and sugar mixture, the mashed bananas, and also the lightly blended eggs all together in this bowl. So let's go ahead and add everything. I'm gonna start off with adding the mashed bananas. Then I will add in our butter and sugar mix. And I'm gonna go get a spatula, or the spatulas that you use to really get all of it out. I'm gonna use this to really get the excess out of here. Okay. Add that in there. And then we're also going to add in our lightly blended egg. And we're just gonna mix this all together. Okay, and now the next step is that we're going to move on to our dry ingredients, which is going to be the flour, baking soda, salt, and then we're going to add everything together. And at the end, we're going to add our vanilla extract. So I have our final bowl here, and this is where we're going to put our flour, our baking soda, teaspoon of salt, and we're going to add it all together to the wet mixture that we just made. So let's go ahead and gather. We're going to gather 1 1/2 cup of flour. So we have our measurements 1 cup and 1/2 a cup. So I've got the 1 cup and the 1/2 a cup. Then we're also going to need 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So I've got our teaspoon measurement. One teaspoon of baking soda. And we will also need 1/2 a teaspoon of salt. Or 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to whisk these together. Okay. And now it is time for the fun part. And that includes combining our wet ingredients with the dry ingredients. Okay, so we're going to then bring out our wet ingredients and combine our dry ingredients. And we're going to whisk these together. Just lightly. As you can see, if you whisk it too hard, the flour will start to jump out. So we're gonna whisk it just lightly. You see how it's starting to get nice and thick? That's what we want. Now that it's thicker, we can mix with a little bit more muscle. And you get a delicious batter. Look at that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And if you want any walnuts or raisins, you can add that in there now. And then we're going to bake at 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean. And then we're going to let the banana bread rest for 10 minutes before transferring it to a wire rack to cool, or anywhere in your home that you have to let it cool. Just let it sit for 10 minutes, okay? So now let's go ahead and get our oven ready, but first we need to add our vanilla extract. And it's going to be 1/2 teaspoon. So we've added our 1/2 teaspoon. Just gonna mix it up. Okay, it smells so good already. And then we're gonna transfer it over into our banana bread, our little banana bread, our loaf pan. That's what we're going to transfer it into. First we have to grease our loaf pan, so we want to make sure that it has some oil. So this is our little loaf pan. It's like a rectangle, so it's perfect shape for our bread. I'm going to just take a little bit of olive oil, and then I'm just going to grease the pan just a little bit. That way our banana bread doesn't stick to the pan. Just a slight grease. Got a little bit of excess grease, so off camera I'm gonna tone this down a little bit. Okay, so now this is greased decently. We're going to transfer our banana bread mix into our pan. And while we're transferring this over, I'm already preheating the oven so that it's ready for the banana bread to go right in. Let's go ahead and transfer. I'm just gonna leave this evenly coated on top so it can rise all the same. Okay, and then there you have it. This is our banana bread mix, ready to go into the oven at 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes. And then we'll be back and we'll see how moist and flavorful it turned out. So this is our delicious banana bread. This is the end result. It is slightly crusted on the top, and we're looking for a nice moist texture in the inside. We're gonna get a knife and we're going to open up the inside just to ensure that it's nice and crisp like we want it to be. As you can hear how nice and crusted it is on the outside. So we're just gonna cut into it like so. It is so moist and fluffy on the inside. That's what you want. Nice fluffy banana bread. Let's take a bite. It has a lot of banana. You can taste the brown sugar. Really nice. I hope you enjoyed this recipe and that you try it yourself. Thanks so much for watching.